Book 3, Chapter 89, continuing with verse 31. They were thrown in a frying pan upon fire, where they remained unheard and exclaimed, "We rejoice, O King, at the delight of our souls in thinking of one another." They were tied to the feet of elephants to be trampled, but they remained uninjured and said, "King, we feel our hearty joy at our memories of each other." They were lashed with rods and straps and many other sorts of scourges which the king devised from time to time. But being brought back from the scourging ground and asked about their suffering, they returned the same answer as before. Moreover, said the Brahman Indra to the king, "This world is full in the form of my beloved one. All your punishments inflict no pain on her, because she views the whole world as full of myself. Therefore, all your punishments to torment the body can give no pain to the mind, soul, which is my true self and constitutes my personality, Purusha, that resides in my person. This body is only an ideal form and presents a shadowy appearance to view. You can pour out your punishments upon it for a while, but it amounts to no more than striking a shadow with a stick. Nobody can break down a brave, firm mind. Then tell me, great king, what do the powers of the mighty amount to?" The cause that conspire to disturb the nature of the resolute mind are the false conceptions of external appearances. Therefore, it is better to chastise such bodies which mislead the mind to error. The mind is forever firm, that is steadfast to its fixed purpose. The mind identifies with the object which it has constantly in its thoughts. Being and not being are words applicable to bodies. They do not apply to the mind, because what is positive in thought cannot be negated in any way. The mind is immovable and cannot be moved by any effort like one can move bodies. It is impregnable to all external actions, and neither your anger or favor can have any effect on it. It is possible for men of strong resolutions to change the course of their actions. But where is such a strong-minded man to be found, who is able to withstand or change the currents of his thoughts? It is impossible to move the mind from its fixed fulcrum, just as it is impractical for tender stags to remove a mountain from its base. This black-eyed beauty is the fixed prop of my mind. She is seated in the lofty temple of my mind, like the goddess Bhavani on Mount Kailash. I fear nothing as long as I see this beloved preserver of my life and soul before me. I sit amidst the conflagration of a burning mountain in summer's heat. But wherever I stand or fall, I am cooled under the shadow of her showering cloud. I think of nothing except the only object of my thought and wish. I cannot persuade myself to believe me as any other than Indra, the lover of Ahalya. It is by constant association that I have come to this belief of myself. I cannot think of me otherwise than what is in my nature. Know, O king, that the wise have only one object in their thought and view. The mind, like Mount Meru, is not moved by threat or pity. It is the body that you contain by one or the other means. The wise, O king, are masters of their minds. There is none and nothing to deter them from their purpose. Know it for certain, O king, that neither these bodies about us nor these bodies and sensations of ours are realities. They are only shows of truth and not the movers of the mind. On the contrary, it is the mind that supplies the bodies and senses with their powers of action. Just like water supplies trees and branches with their sap. The mind is generally believed to be a sensuous and passive principle, wholly moved by the outward impressions of senses. But in truth, the mind is the active and moving principle of the organs of action. Because all the senses become dormant in absence of the action of the mind. So the functions of the whole creation are at a stop without the activity of the universal mind. Chapter 90. Indra and Ahalya's attachment through reincarnations. The sunset. The lotus-eyed king, thus defied by this perverse Indra, addressed sage Bharata, who was sitting by him. The king spoke. Lord, you are acquainted with all morality. See this ravisher of my wife, and hear the arrogant speech that he utters before our face. Please, O great sage, pronounce your curse upon him without delay, because it is a breach of justice to spare the wicked, just as it is to hurt the innocent. Being thus asked by the great king Bharata, the best of the wise munis, considered the crime of this wicked soul Indra. Then he pronounced his curse by saying, Do you, O reprobate sinner, soon meet with your perdition, together with this sinful woman who is so faithless to her husband. Then they both replied to the king and his venerable sage, saying, What fools must you be to have wasted your curse? The great gain of your tapas on our devoted heads. The curse you have pronounced can do us very little harm. Though our bodies should fall, yet it cannot affect our inner minds and spirits. The inner principle of the soul, owing to its inscrutable, subtle, and intellectual nature, can never be destroyed by anybody anywhere. The sun added. Then this fascinated pair, head over heels in love, fell down by effect of the curse, just like when branches cut from a tree fall upon the ground, being subject to the torment of reincarnation. They were both born as a pair of deer in mutual attachment, then as a couple of turtle doves in their inseparable alliance. Afterwards, O Lord of our creation, this loving pair came to be born as man and woman, who by their practice of austerities came to be reborn at last as a Brahman and Brahmani. Thus, the curse of Bharata was capable only of transforming their bodies. It never touched their minds or souls, which continued in their unshakable attachment in every state of their reincarnation. Therefore, wherever and in whatever shape they come to be reborn, they always assume the form of a male and female pair by virtue of their delusion and memories. Seeing the true love that existed between this loving pair in the forest, the trees also became enamored of the other sex of their own kind. Brahma wonders whether to create. Two aspects of the mind, chapter 91. The sun continued. My Lord, therefore I say that the mind, like time, is indestructible by its nature, and the unavoidable curse of the sage would not alter its tenor. Therefore, it is not right for you, O great Brahma, to destroy the ideal fabric of the air-drawn world. Of the sons of Indu. It is improper for great souls to put a check on others' fantasies. O Lord of Lords, what are you lacking in this universe of so many worlds that should make your great soul pine for the air-built world of Indu's sons? The mind is truly the maker of worlds. It is known as the prime male, Purusha. Hence, the mind, fixed to its purpose, is not to be shaken from it by the power of any curse or by virtue of any drug or medicine, or even by any kind of chastisement. The mind is the image of everybody, is not destructible like the body, but remains forever fixed to its purpose. Therefore, let the 10 Eindava brothers continue in their ideal act of creation. O Lord, who has made these creatures, remain firm in your place. See the infinite space spread before you, commensurate with the ample scope of your understanding in the triple spheres of your consciousness and mind and the vast emptiness of space. These threefold infinities of ethereal, mental, and intellectual spaces are only reflections of the infinite emptiness of divine consciousness. They supply you, O Brahma, with ample space to create as many worlds as you wish. You are at liberty, at your pleasure, to create whatever you like. When you have the power to create everything, do not think that the sons of Indu have robbed you of anything. Brahma said, after the Son had spoken to me in this manner concerning men and other worlds, I reflected a while and then answered him, saying, well, you have said, O Son, for I see the ample space of air lying open before me. I also see my spacious mind and the vast comprehension of my consciousness. Therefore, I will go on with my work of creation forever. I will immediately think about multitudes of material productions. O Son, I ordain you as my first offspring, Manu, to produce all these for me. Now produce all things as you will and according to my command. At which the brilliant Sun readily complied to my request. Thus this great light stood with its two-part body of light and heat. With the first, he shone like the sun in the middle of heaven. With the second, his body's property of heat, he became my agent, Manu, in the nether worlds. He produced all things in the course of the revolution of his seasons, as I asked him to do so. Thus, I have related to you, O sagely Vasishta, all about the nature and acts of the mind and the omnipotence of the great soul that infuses its might in the mind through its acts of creation and production. Whatever reflection is represented in the mind manifests in a visible form and becomes compact and stands confessed before. Look at the extraordinary power of the mind that raised ordinary Brahmin men to the rank of Brahma through their conception of it in themselves. As the individual souls of the Aindavas were incorporated with Brahma through their intense thought of him within, so also have we attained to the level of Brahman. So we have a comment for the mind is truly the maker of worlds. It is known as the prime male Purusha. Hence, the mind fixed to its purpose is not to be shaken from it by the power of any curse or by virtue of any drug or medicine or even by any kind of chastisement. So the word mind is used throughout in various meanings and ways, but here we would understand the mind to be the silent witness. And throughout all that we've been reading here, the mind is the silent witness. It is given this identification here in verse 4. The question, what about the Sutra of Sattva Purusha? In Sutra, Purusha is absolute, but in this verse, it is mind. Mind is a relative area, but this is where we need to actually see the Sanskrit. We may find a liberal interpretation, but anything that is identified as Purusha is not the mind of the collection of individual karmic traces. Purusha is pure consciousness. Even more than that, Purusha is pure consciousness with attention. Pure consciousness can be completely silent with no object of attention. As soon as there's an object of attention, pure consciousness is beginning to create. Because there can be no object without creation. And so the wife of Indu, Ahalya, is that creation of the mind, or the creation of the Purusha, pure consciousness. And so what is being told here about Indu, or Indra and Ahalya, is the fascination that exists between pure consciousness and that which it creates. Anytime there is something created, it is illusion. But if the creator is fascinated with the illusion, then the creator is captured by it, bound by it, and no longer free. And this was the case of Indra and Ahalya. This is not our objective. This is not freedom. This is not moksha. Moksha is silent witness, established in being. So it is, of course, quite possible for consciousness to be attached to its creation. This is what creates the beginning of jiva. This is the mistake of the intellect, to see itself as existing outside of itself in the illusion that it has created. It's like an ocean is pure with no bubbles at all. And then one bubble forms in the ocean. This single bubble in the ocean captures all the attention of the ocean within it. And when that attention is captured by the bubble, that bubble has become existent and it has become separate from the ocean. And therefore it has broken the wholeness of the ocean. The ocean remains in its wholeness, but the bubble, from the perspective of the bubble, it is separate from it. This is the great mistake of the Purusha, the creative principle. When the Purusha, the creative principle, becomes expressed, and attaches itself to its creation, then begins the fall into samsara, or relativity, or the illusion. And from this bondage and ignorance and lack of wholeness. Let's continue with verse 13. Then this great light stood with its two-part body of light and heat. With the first it shone like the sun in the middle of heaven. With the second, his body's property of heat. He became my agent, Manu, in the netherworld. He produced all things in the course of the revolutions of his seasons, as I had asked him to do. Thus I have related to you, O sagely Vasishta, all about the nature and acts of the mind, and the omnipotence of the great soul that infuses its might in the mind through its acts of creation and production. Whatever reflection is represented in the mind manifests in a visible form and becomes compact and stands confessed before it. Look at the extraordinary power of the mind that raised ordinary Brahmin men to the rank of Brahma through their conception of it in themselves. As the individual souls of the Eindavas were incorporated with Brahma through their intense thought of him within, so also have we attained to the level of Brahma. The mind is full of innate ideas, and the figure that lays a firm hold of the mind appears expressed outside in a visible shape. There is no material substance besides one's own mind. The mind is the wonderful attribute of the soul and bears in itself many other properties, like the inborn pungency of pepper. These properties appear also as the mind and are called its hyperphysical or mental faculties. It is a downright mistake on the part of some Sankhya materialists to understand them as belonging to the body. The same mind, when combined with its pure desires, is also called the living principle, jiva. After all is said, it is bodiless and unknown in its nature. There is nobody like me or any other person in this world except this wonderful and self-existent mind, which, like the sons of Hindu, assumes the false conception of being real Brahmas themselves. As the Eindavas were Brahmas in their minds, so my mind makes me a Brahma also. It is the mind that makes one such and such, according to the conception that it entertains of himself. It is only by a conceit of my mind that I think myself situated as a Brahma in this place. Otherwise, all these material bodies are known to be as unreal, like the emptiness of the soul in which they abide. The unsullied mind approximates the divine by its constant meditation of the divine. But by being sullied by the variety of its desires, it becomes a living being, which at last turns to animal life and the living body. The intelligent body shines like any of the luminous orbs in the Eindava worlds. It is brilliant with the intelligent soul, like the appearance of a visionary creation of the mind. All things are the production of the mind and reflections of itself, like the two moons in the sky, one being only a reflection of the other. and as the concepts of man's worlds. There is nothing such as real or unreal, nor is there any personality which I or you or other. Real and unreal are both alike, unless it is the conception that makes something appear as a reality which has otherwise no reality of itself. Know the mind is both active and inert. It is vast, owing to the vastness of its desire. It is lively on account of its spiritual nature of the great God. The mind becomes inert by its incorporation with physical material objects. The conception of phenomena as real cannot make them real, any more than the appearance of a golden bracelet can make it gold, or the phenomena appearing in Brahma can identify themselves with Brahma himself. Brahma being all in all, the inert also are said to be intelligent, or else all beings, from ourselves down to blocks, are neither inert nor intelligent. It is said that lifeless blocks are without intelligence and perception. But everything that bears a like relation to another has its perception also like the other. Know that everything is sentient and has its perception or sensitivity. All things possess perception because of the relation between themselves and the Supreme Soul. Therefore, the terms inert and sensitive in their application to things exist in the one divine spirit are meaningless. It is like attributing fruit and flowers to the trees of a barren land. The barren waste refers to the vacuum of the divine mind, and its trees to its unsubstantial ideas, which are neither inert nor sentient, like the fruit or flowers of those trees. Notion or thought formed by and an act of consciousness is called the mind. Of these, the intellect or intellectual part is the active principle, but the thought or mental part is quite inert. Intellectual part consists of the operation of exercise of consciousness, but the thoughts are that which is thought, chaitya, which are the acts of consciousness, chit, are known to be inert. These are viewed by the individual soul in the false light of the world. The nature of consciousness, chit, is pure unity. But the mind, chitta, situated within consciousness, and therefore called established in the intellect. Chit Shta is a dualism of itself, and this appears in the form of duality in the world. Thus, by exercise of consciousness itself as the other form, the ideal assumes the shape of the phenomenal world, being indivisible in itself. It wanders through the labyrinth of errors with its other part of the mind. There is no error in the unity of consciousness, nor is the soul liable to error unless it is deluded by its belief in plurality. Consciousness is as full as the ocean, with all its thoughts rising and setting in it like endless waves. That which you call the mental part of consciousness is full of error and ignorance. And the ignorance of the intellectual part produces the errors of egoism and personality. There is no error of egoism or personality in the transcendental category of the divine soul, because it is the integrity of all consciousness. Just as the sea is the collection of all its waves and waters, the belief of egoism rises like any other thought of the mind and is as inborn in it as water in the mirage, which does not exist really at all. The term ego is inapplicable to the pure and simple internal soul, which, being weakened by the gross idea of its ardent desire, takes the name of ego. Just as a thickened coldness is called by the name of frost. The pure substance of consciousness forms the ideas of gross bodies, just as one dreams of his death in his sleep. All-pervading consciousness, which is the all-inherent and omnipotent soul, produces all forms in itself, of which there is no end, until they are reduced to unity. The mind manifests various appearances in the form of things, and being of a pure ethereal form, it assumes various shapes by its intellectual or spiritual body. Let the learned abstain from thoughts of the threefold forms of the pure intellectual, spiritual, and physical bodies, and reflect on them in his own mind as the reflection of divine consciousness.